and happy Friday. Today we are going to be going over the May 8th portion of the distance learning packet. I hope you all have had a great week, so let's go ahead and get started. Today for reading, again, we're going to want you to read for 15 minutes and use a book of your own or a foldable book from the end of the packet. If you do have an online resource such as Storyline Online, that will also work and count towards those daily 15 minutes of reading. The other thing that we're going to be doing for reading is you're going to review the article together and making a list of all the compound words. So that informational article that we've been using the last 2 days, you're going to go through that and you're going to make a list of all the compound words. But an easier way of doing that is just circling the words in that article. And remember, a compound word is two words that are put together. Okay? And I will go over that a little bit more once we get to that portion of the packet. And then you're going to take turns dividing the words into parts. So when you have those two compound words, work with somebody in your family and either an older sibling or a parent and take the words apart and then see how when they're put together, they make a completely different word. Okay? For your writing, you're going to choose a compound word of your choice and write a story about it. For example, some compound words are rainbow, doghouse, boardwalk. As you can see, we have rain and we have bow, and then when it's put together, it makes a completely different word and changes that meaning. We are also going to have a grammar and spelling worksheet. A little bit of a review from yesterday when we were going over the comparatives of ER and EST, and then we are going to end with some math, where we have a math task and then a little bit of procedural practice. So that's what is lined up for us today, so let's go ahead and get started. The first thing we are going to do in the packet is reviewing the article. So here is the article that you have been going over the last 2 days, and it wants you to go through and circle compound words in the story. Remember, compound words are two words that make a new word when they are put together. And here's the examples from the last slide. So I gave you 3 examples. I'm not going to go through the whole article. The 3 examples I came across were boardwalk, and as you can see, board is a word on its own, and then walk is a word on its own. But when it's put together, it makes a completely different word, so that makes it a compound word. But each of those words can stand alone and make their own word. The next one I came across was councilman. If you look here, we have the first word would be council, and then the second word would be man, and then when put together, that is councilman. And then I found boardwalk again. So some of them are going to be duplicated, and that's okay. But I want you to go through, and a fun task would be working with your parents on this or a sibling, and you're going to circle all of the compound words you find in this article. And it's okay if they're duplicated words. As you can see, I have boardwalk twice. And then moving on to the writing, going back to the reading, you're going to do all 4 pages of those, so not just the 2 pages. I just did the example on that page, but you're going to do 4 pages of that article. Okay, and now moving on to writing. Writing is kind of fun because you're going to get to be creative. You're going to choose a compound word of your choice and write a story. The compound word doesn't necessarily have to be a word that's in the story. It can be any compound word you would like. But remember, when we are writing a narrative story, there are certain things you need to remember to include. Characters. So the characters are who is in the story. Another thing you're going to want to include is actions. What did the characters do in the story? A dialogue. And remember, dialogue is what the characters say back and forth to each other. Anytime a character speaks, that whatever they say is going to be in quotation marks. And that means that's something they're saying in the story. And then also a narrative story is going to have a problem and a solution. And remember, a problem is something that happens to the character in the story. And the solution is, how did that problem get solved? All right, and when you're writing your story, you're going to remember to start each sentence with a capital letter. Proper nouns such as names and places are capitalized. So the names of your characters are going to be capitalized, and if it's the name of a place such as a state like California, California would be capitalized. Or if it's a restaurant such as Chick-fil-A, that would also be capitalized because that is a proper noun. And you're going to want to use punctuation at the end of each sentence. So if you're asking a question, it's going to be a question mark. If you're stating something that's really exciting, it's going to be an exclamation point. And if it's just a simple thought, that is going to be a period. If you need more time on this, remember you can always pause this slide or you can go back, and you're going to use that lined paper in your distance learning packet to write your story. And the second part of the distance learning packet for writing is a little bit of review from yesterday. Like I said, we're going to be going over comparatives, and those are words that end in ER or EST. It wants us to write the correct spelling word. So these are the spelling words it gave us. And as you can see, some of them end in EST and some of them end in ER. And what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be separating them. The first column here, it wants us spelling words that compare two things. Like we talked yesterday with that grammar worksheet, we said that when you are comparing two things, a lot of times those words end in ER because you're comparing two things, which is colder, which is taller. So the words that end in ER are going to go in this column and need to be written here. And then down here, you're going to write the words that compare more than two things. So when more than two things are being compared, so in three or more, they're going to fall under that EST comparative, which is the fastest, which is the slowest. Okay, so it would look something like this. You're using these words. I'm going to give you a few examples, and then I'm going to want you to try some on your own. So spelling words that compare two things, like we just talked about, those are going to end in ER. So I'm going to go up here. The first one is colder. So I'm going to fill in colder here. Again, focusing on that ER. The next ER word I found is newer. So I'm going to write newer on that line. And you're going to do that with the rest of the words in the box, finding the ones that end in ER and write them under this column. And then you're going to go down here, and again, the words that are comparing more than two things, and we said that those comparatives end in EST. So again, using these words, you're going to go up and find the words that end in EST, and you're going to combine those words. The first one is tallest, and then if you're going in order, the next one is going to be fastest. And that is an example on how you're going to separate those comparatives into which are comparing two or more things and which are comparing which are comparing two things and then which are comparing two or more things. And then number 11 down here, it wants you to circle the two spelling words that are antonyms of each other. Well, we know that synonym means the same. So if you were dealing with a synonym, that means a word that means the same. But today we're looking for the two words that mean opposite. So if we have faster, the opposite of faster is slower. So let's look. Newer, that is not the opposite of faster. Taller, that is also not the opposite of faster. But here we have slower, and slower is the opposite of faster. So that tells me that is going to be the antonym. So we're going to circle faster and slower. Do not hesitate to reach out if you are struggling on this page or you just need a little bit of extra help. I'm always here to help with that. And finally, we're going to move on to our math for the day. For your math test today, you're going to play a game, and it's how to play Pig, a math game. Materials you're going to need is a six-sided die. That would be a dice, pencil, and paper. If you do not have a dice at home, one thing I can recommend is writing numbers on little pieces of paper, and you can fold them up and put them in a bowl or another area and then just pull them out randomly. Would be a good alternative to actually using a dice in this game. Pig is a game for 2 to 6 players, so this would be a good game to play with your family. Players take turns rolling a die as many times as they like. If a roll is a 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6. So if you're using a dice and you roll that number, the player adds that many points to their score for a turn. But if you don't have the dice and you're pulling out the pieces of paper, again, just using the same rules. If you get a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5, or a 6, that's how many points you're going to add up. A player must choose to end their turn at any time and bank their points. So anytime you end your turn, you can go as many times as you want and stop, and then you're going to add up your points and bank them. But remember, if a player rolls a 1, you lose all of your points. So if you're rolling and you have a bunch of points and then you roll a 1, or you choose a 1 out of that, like on the piece of paper that we talked about, then you're going to lose your points. So you don't want to roll a 1. Okay, and your turn's over, and that would be the next person's turn. The first player to score 50 or more points wins. So the goal of the game is to get as close to 50 or more, to be the first one rather, sorry, that gets to 50 or over, and you win the game. So that is a really fun game to play with your family. Yeah, if you have any questions on that, let me know. And then we are going to move on to our procedural practice, where we're going to complete each sentence. We are given 3 words here, where we are given tens, we are given the word regroup, and we are given the word ones. So we need to read each sentence here and decide which is going to fit better. Number 1. In the number 352, the 5 is in the blank place. Well, if we look at number 352, we know that the 2 is in the ones, the 3 is in the hundreds. That would mean that the 5 is in the tens place. So now we need to figure out where regroup is going to fit and where ones is going to fit. So moving on to number 2. In the number 352, the 2 is in the blank place. Well, if you look at the 3, we know that is in the hundreds column. If you look at the 5, that is in the tens column. So that lets us know that the 2 is actually in the ones place. And then moving on to number 3, if the ones add up to more than 9, you must. Remember, when we are adding, if a certain place value column adds up to 9 or more, we have to regroup, right? We're trading out those ones for another 10, or a 10 for, or 100 for a 10. Okay, so that's what that should look like. And then we have a little bit of review from earlier this week, where we need to make 100 to add. Okay, remember, we need to fill out this diagram making 100. So we have 25 plus 197. Well, 197 is 3 away. It's almost to 200. It's 3 away. So we're going to borrow some from 25. We're going to decompose 25, break that apart to make 200 and make it easier to add. So we know that we need 3 to make 200. So we're going to put a 3 on this portion of the diagram. And then we're taking that 3 away from 25. So if we take 3 away from 25 and we count back, 25, 24, 23, 22, we know that that leaves us with 22 left. Now we're going to add that 3 to 197 that makes that 200. Our 22 is already brought down there for us. So we are going to plug in 200 there. And now it makes it a little bit easier to add 222 more equals 222. So because we didn't change any of the values, all we did was we decomposed, we broke apart that 25. That's going to let us know that that 222 is also the sum of 25 plus 197. Number 5, we're going to do the same thing. We have 314 plus 96. 96 is so close to 100, so we're going to borrow some from 314. We're going to break that apart, decompose it, enough to make 100, and then whatever is left, we will add to that 100. 96, it is 4 away from 100. It is 4 spots away from 100, so we know we're going to have to add 4. And if we take 4 away from 314, decomposing that, what is left is 310. As you see here, the 310 is going to be brought down here to this portion of our diagram, and then we are going to add that 4 to 96, making 100. So 310 plus 100 more, you notice there's no value to the tens, there's no value to the ones, so the only place value that is going to increase, remembering 3 plus 1 is 4, we are going to put 410 as our answer. And because we did not change the value of 314, all we did was decompose that, break it apart, that means that if 310 plus 100 equals 410, that 314 plus 96 also equals 410. Okay, and we are going to move on to the last portion of our math, where we are going to add tens, mentally add a 10 and a 100. And then we have a little bit of practice of finding the missing add-in. So for number 6, we have 564 plus 10. If you notice, there is not a number in that hundreds column, so that value is automatically 0, so we know the hundreds is not going to change. We do have a 1 in the tens, so this spot is going to increase by 1. And we know 6 plus 1 is 7, and then we have a 0 in the ones column, so that's not going to change. So if we use our mental math skills, that's going to tell us that 564 plus 10 more is 574. I'm going to want you to try this one on your own, focusing on that mental math skill. That is going to change is the hundreds column. So go ahead and try that one on your own. We are going to do some practice now, finding that missing add-in. So we have 239 plus a mystery number equals 249. So let's go place value by place value to see which column we might be looking at that might be increased. So we have a 2 in the hundreds, and we have a 2 in the hundreds over there. So we know that we are not adding a 100. There's going to be a value of 0 in that hundreds column. And now if you look at 3, the tens column, sorry, and we have a 3 and we have a 4. Oh, that did increase. So we're looking at the tens column. How many did that increase by? We have 3 and we have 4. So we know that increased by 1. So we're going to put a 1 in that 10 spot. And then we have a 9, or I'm sorry, a 1 in the 10 spot. And now we're going to look at the ones column. We have a 9 and another 9. That did increase, so that is going to give us a 0. So we know 239 plus 10 equals 249. Go ahead and try 9 on your own. Again, remembering that we are mentally adding 10 and 100. To see if you can find out which place value spot there was increased. Just go place value by place value, and that will help out there. I hope you all had a wonderful week and you have a great weekend. If you have any questions, please reach out to me and I will do my very best to put you in the right direction. I hope to talk to you all soon. Goodbye.